Hi, I'm Hazel, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I set up key bindings for a WoW gamepad. So not one of these things, but one of these things. Maybe you recently got a new one, or you're thinking about getting one and you're not quite sure where to start with binding it. I'll be going through my setup on the Razer Orbweaver, but I used the exact same binds on the Logitech G13. If you have the G13, you will need the Logitech gaming software, and if you're using a Razer gamepad, you will need Razer Synapse. Now, you can do this without any WoW add-ons just by using the key bindings menu, but it'll be 1,000 times easier with an Action Bar add-on. I'm going to be using Bartender 4 here, and I'll put a link to that in the description. Lesson number 1. The default key bindings are trash. By default, they recommend that you use the prime 4 keys as a WASD for movement, and that is just a massive waste. That's what the thumbstick is for, and that's what we'll set up first. Open your software and navigate to the thumbstick section. Make your forward W, your left Q, and your right E. You can bind back to S if you really want to, but there's almost never a good reason to be backpedaling, so this is as good a place as any to rip off the band-aid. Similarly, we're not a bunch of keyboard turners out here, so we are not binding A and D. Look around with your mouse. Congratulations, you just freed up 3 fingers to play WoW with. Get in game and test this out just to make sure that you put the E and the Q in the right spots. Near the joystick, there are 2 secondary mouse-style buttons. I bind these to M and B for map and bags, but there's lots of valid options. You won't be using these while moving too much, so utility and menus are a good place to start. Next, let's set up Main Street. The 12 buttons in a 3x4 block down the center of the gamepad are where I like to put my damage abilities. The first 6 are kind of a home row. Now, what keys we actually bind these to does not matter, as long as you don't overwrite other important keybinds like your escape key or your push-to-talk button. For this reason, I bind these 12 keys to F1 through F12 in order. You won't need to reach these on an actual keyboard, so don't worry about that. Then, in-game, I take a 12-button bar in Bartender and arrange it like this in that same 3x4 grid. Open up key binding and go through and match that same F1 through F12. Having the grid visually match the grid of the gamepad makes these a lot easier to learn for me. The first 6 abilities on the grid are comfy to hit, and the bottom ones take more getting used to. Match your spammy, rotational abilities to the top 6 with the spammiest on these 2 keys under your index finger. The bottom keys I use for abilities that still need to be bound but I use less often, such as Mindbender and Mindbomb. My F9 here is the easiest to reach of the bottom 6, so I put my power word shield there to sprint myself. Which abilities you put where isn't important as long as it makes sense to you and the spammy buttons are in comfortable spots. Next up, we'll add modifiers. In WoW, there are many occasions when you might want to use your Shift or Alt keys. For me, I use quite a few modifier macros, especially for PvP. I like binding these bottom left 2 keys to Shift and Alt. That puts them under my pinky finger, which is a familiar place for modifier keys. So we've got a solid 12 buttons now, plus modifiers for a potential 36 bindings, but wait, there's more! We have 6 keys left unaccounted for, all 4 of the right-hand keys and then the top 2 on the left. Here's how I use them. This guy here in the bottom right, that's my space key. I like to keep jump in an easy to remember spot near my movement keys so that I can leap over any jumping mechanics and also hop laps around Dalaran like a bunny. Above that, I've chosen V and K and bound those to an extra bar on my UI over here. The keys you choose don't matter, just pick something that isn't already taken and then add that key binding to the bar with Bartender. Those 2 took me a long time to get comfortable hitting accurately, so don't put anything too life-changing there. On my Shadow Priest, that's currently Dispel Magic, and then where I used to keep Life Grip. I should put something else there, but I just can't move on. On the top right, I use this key to toggle my auto run. You can bind it directly to Numlock or Clear on Mac, but I got tired of accidentally typing in caps, so I changed the auto run key binding to this random bracket. For these last 2 on the top left, I'm really bad at hitting these, so I don't put anything too important there. The top one is up, where I keep my disenchant, and below that is left, where I've put my details toggle macro. The directional keys are good ones to bind to your gamepad because they're not used by default in WoW. Now, if you're looking at my UI and wondering where this second grid of 12 fits in, that is my mouse grid. In addition to my Orbweaver, I play WoW with a Logitech G600 mouse, although of course you can set this up with a Razer Naga or a Corsair Scimitar. That grid is bound to 1 through 12 and directly correlates to the 1 through 12 grid on the side of my mouse. I use this bar for cooldowns like Dispersion, Vampiric Embrace, my health pot, and other buttons that I use often but aren't part of my rotation. Between my mouse and my gamepad, I only touch my keyboard to type in chat or open menus. You could, if you wanted to, put menu keybinds on the peripheral keys so that you need your keyboard even less, which is probably smart. I've been using gamepads for over 6 years now, so I'm just old and set in my ways. And that's how I keybind my gamepad. This is far from the only way to do it, but hopefully if you were looking for a place to start, this helps you out. I'll put links to all of the gear that I mentioned as well as my Orbweaver vs G13 comparison video in the description. Thanks for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye!